And we'll start with item number 1, which is the Point at Harborview update. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor, members of City Council. At this time, Kevin Hughes, the Director of Economic Development, will provide the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of Council. As Mr. Roberts said, I'll give you an update of where we are in the Point at Harborview. Again, that's the Economic Development Authority site that's owned, sometimes called the 55 acres. And I'm really going to hit kind of on two main themes, the one being the current thinking and what's led us up to that related to the site itself, but also where it sits in the world, specifically Harborview and College Drive, what's been happening there, what we hope to do, not just on our site, but to inject some more energy in the surrounding sites, and then also talk about what's on the regular session, which is a resolution in support of some of the things I'm going to talk about with the joint use agreement that we have with TCC and the Real Estate Foundation and some other signers. So to set the stage, I think you're all familiar with where the site is. It's highlighted there in red. We're out there building some intersection improvements at Harborview and College. It's a very interesting site as it relates to the opportunity to set the stage for the things north of us at the Tidewater Real Estate Foundation site and the opportunity along the James River, but it also has the opportunity to bring maybe some more life into some industries that are struggling a little bit that were doing very well years ago at the Bridgeway Technology Center. But then also it's a very interesting site in the fact that you really have two distinct development opportunities, one at Harborview Boulevard and one at College Drive, and it has the opportunity kind of to serve as a transition, but take a little bit of both and set the stage for what's happening in that northern part of the city. To talk about where we are and where we were and where we are, I started with the city in 2005, right when we purchased this land, so I can't really speak to what was being felt then, but I think generally speaking it was to create more economic development. Joint Forces Command was kicking butt and taking names, and we saw a lot of defense contractor action from it. And that action really was related to leasing and injecting new commercial space with those leases. On the left-hand side, you can see the tenants that existed in 2010 because of Joint Forces Command. And it's basically a who's who list of those in the defense industry and the contractor base there. Obviously, when Joint Forces Command disestablished, that changed pretty quickly. So what you see on the right-hand side is basically the tenant base of 2017 in those exact buildings. Currently, I believe the vacancy is about 86, maybe 90,000 square feet of space in those three separate buildings. And the last activity we've seen out there has been a new school. It's a STEM school, but private school, as well as a satellite church location. So from an economic development, from a job creation site, we're beginning to slide back, and that's not where we want to be. Now, we're definitely seeing some great things up in the Harborview area. Retail is doing very well despite national headlines that you read along College Drive. We're seeing that work its way over to Harborview Boulevard in a little different scale. Obviously, we're seeing some more residential and mixed use, but then we are seeing a lot of medical growth a little further south from here, driven by Centera and Bon Secours. But that hasn't necessarily worked its way up to this northern section of the city itself at that intersection. So it's pretty staggering when you look at who was leasing and now who is leasing today. And so that's something we want to be impactful, something that we think about when we think about the 55 acres on their site, as well as when we think about what the Tidewater Community College piece has for potential. To set the tone a little bit, I want to show you a quick little video. It's only 40 seconds, but it talks about how real estate's changing, and then I'll jump in and translate what we think that means for us. So, Andy, if you could hit that.
The geography of innovation is shifting. To find the innovative economy 20 years ago, a worker needed to drive to a secluded research park, work in isolation, and keep ideas secret. Today, proximity is everything. Workers want to be in urban places that are walkable, bikeable, hyper-caffeinated, where they can bump into other workers and share ideas. Firms also want to be close to other firms, research labs, and universities in collaborative spaces so that smart ideas can be turned into smart products for the market. Innovation districts are this century's productive geography. They are both competitive places and cool spaces, and they will transform your city and metropolis.
So that video is from the Brookings Institute, which is basically kind of like a think tank for best practices, and it talks about innovation districts. And again, this is my 2 cents. Innovation districts, kind of a new buzzword. You can call it mixed-use development. Innovation has a little more geared towards R&D, research and development, metro areas. But it's really talking about something that I think everyone kind of knows, kind of what's old is new again. Metro areas, people living by each other, bumping into each other, retail, restaurants, housing, offices in close proximity. It's no longer about building the jigsaw puzzle of you over here and you over here, trying to make some of that stuff work, and innovation coming out of it, especially related to technology. And so with that being the theme, you'll see the strategy of where we've been with the EDA on our site specifically, but you also see that theme going out, especially in Hampton Roads. And a lot of this talks about, you can think about it from a town center type district in Virginia Beach, or what's happening at the Tech Center near Oyster Point. So stuff that you're probably aware of. You might not be familiar with the term innovation district, but you can also probably use that with mixed use. And it's something that's in really practice throughout the country, taking these suburban office parks that basically Bridgeway Tech is, and innovating them and having more life there. And so here's a couple of articles around the country. There's one in Northern Virginia, the New York Times wrote about, and taking these suburban office districts and making them relevant again. ULI did a study in the greater DC area that said about 16% of their office products is obsolete because it hasn't kept up with the times. Up in the left-hand corner, that's from Arizona. The gentleman in the parking lot, that's in Massachusetts. And right in the middle, a significant one is Research Triangle. You know, Research Triangle was the envy of everyone in the country. And there still are, to be honest. But even they know that they need to do things differently. Putting IBM or Cisco in their 10 acres and hoping it all kind of works out is not the way it can happen anymore. So they are putting big time dollars into apartment complexes, into entertainment zones in the middle of the Research Triangle. So this is all happening now. And so when we look at the 55 acres, and I'd say we've evolved towards it, and we've been, it hasn't been, it wasn't our first choice. We wanted to do the easy thing. We wanted to put office development on our site. That is easy. We want to do that. Everybody likes easy. But the market is telling us we don't want to be on your site. We've chased a number of projects since I've been here on that site, and nothing has stuck. It's hard to justify the opportunity or come to you or the EDA and say, let's go build some roads because this is our next office park. It's just not, it's not functioning that way. We're not seeing it in Hampton Roads, and we're definitely not seeing it in Suffolk. And so you'll see, as I get into later slides of where we are in our interaction with Tidewater Community College, that we've kind of begrudgingly moved towards this mixed use or innovation district, and it's because it's not working. Let's just build a suburban office park, and you can see it's happening throughout the country with these examples of folks saying, I've got to think different, I've got to do different in order to bring more uses to bear. It's happening locally. This is a new document. You've probably heard a little bit about Go Virginia, and they probably know a little bit about it, and there's some confusing things about it, and I think everyone's all kind of learning at the same time, even those that came up with it. But they, as part of it, each region, and Hampton Roads and Suffolk is in Region 5, had to create a diversification plan, and this is an excerpt from it, and it gave you all kinds of different ideas about how to diversify the economy and what's working and what's not. And highlighted here is number 12, and it says, facilitate the creation of innovation districts. And it talks about kind of what the video just said, and it says access to urban goods and services, housing, etc. And then it has a list of who's in charge of that. And one of the lists is all city, county planning, development entities, as well as other providers to work on this. And there is some things that you'll probably see related to Suffolk. VMAS has been successful in securing some funding from Go Virginia, and it talks about turning the office environment up there into more of an innovation district. Obviously, you've got some retail, some housing up there that's doing well, so it's a little easier there. Now, granted, it's still suburban, but you're able to bump into each other, go to lunch. It's just a little bit different, a little more cooler than getting in your car, say maybe at Bridgeway. So this is becoming life in Hampton Roads, and some of it already has, but it's just being defined, and it's something that I think makes sense for our site and other sites, to be honest, as we look forward. It is also really represented in the comprehensive plan. So our site in that whole Harborview area is designated as a mixed-use core district in the 2035 comprehensive plan, and it talks about the things that I just mentioned as it relates to innovation zones in that mixed-use core. It talks about intensity for business, retail, residential, and civic uses, and it just creates opportunity for redevelopment, rehab, and infill. And so it's leaning us and pushing us for this, and obviously council adopted this, so you're familiar. So all the themes are there. I think we're kind of grabbing onto it to see how we can make it work on our site and hopefully transition that into making Bridgeway cool again, and an opportunity to create some jobs out there is really what we want to do. So as it relates to the 55 acres or the point at Harborview, this is where we are on a master plan layout. Again, the key is mixture of uses. The key is flexibility. That being said, as you go through the rezoning process, and we're currently in from today's CP Commerce Park, which is kind of that suburban office park, to MUD, mixed-use development. This is an exhibit that's currently in our design criteria as we're working through that process, and hopefully we'll be in public hearings in early 2018. On the left-hand side there, in kind of that orange and that yellow, let's see if I can get this to work. This represents about 18 acres, and the thought right now is that it'd be two specific residential uses. One would be a for-sale townhouse product. The other would be an apartment development or developments. And the thinking right now, really the push, because you only have 18 acres, is to make it very urban. So from an apartment standpoint, you're looking at one central entrances versus the multiple buildings, walk-up style. It's not a suburban type development. The townhouse thought is 3 to 4 stories. The top story maybe would have an openness that you see in Maryland with a patio over it. So bringing some of that townhouse feel when you think about urban townhouses into the site. What is being proffered, because there's still some deals that we haven't landed out there, is this main entrance. Here's College Drive, the roundabout's under construction here, is that we would bring these initial buildings forward. What you see there is 45-degree parking with a median down the middle to create some urban scale, some real feel, to have a dynamic feel when you enter, to know that this is different. Although you're driving into the suburbs, it doesn't feel like it because we brought the buildings up. It feels like a urban district. And we'd have the main entrances of these businesses be on these corners or right on the front. There'd be parking in the rear, but it would have that urban feel, and I'll show you a photo of what we're thinking. The thought, again, on the left-hand side would be you do the highest and the tallest density uses over here and over here, so you can have some openness for visibility if you had some retail anchors in the back as well. And so it's kind of a hybrid of urban, suburban, with some really strong themes towards urban development on the site. So again, I'll focus your attention to this main entrance here to really make that welcoming corridor as you come in, and this is kind of what we're going for. So as you enter in the site, you have the opportunity to pull in directly and just know that this development's different from your typical suburban, maybe grocery anchor development, to really set the tone for what we're doing out there. As with most MUDs or all MUDs, you're looking at what type of uses you're bringing. You're basically writing the code. Obviously, you're taking from the code, but you're writing it. And so a lot of these correlate to a B2 use. However, the list is fairly trimmed down, and it wouldn't have a lot of B2 uses in there. And so because the EDA is doing it, we have the ability to be a little or much more picky as it relates to who's going in there. And so this is just kind of a list to give you a feel of what type of uses you would potentially see out there from a commercial perspective. On the the residential side, we think that in those kind of that orange and yellow area between the townhouse and apartment, you'd be somewhere between the 375 to 400 units on that 18 acres. In the rezoning document, we're referencing 500. There's still a thought that in those entranceway, those buildings that are brought up towards the road with 45-degree parking, there's the potential to do mixed-use buildings. So if the market bears that we could put some apartments or condos above those retail or offices, whatever they translate to be, we'd like the ability to push that number up to 500. And this is part of the rezoning document that's being looked at. So again, those photos that you can see there are a little different than what we have today in the city. So you kind of have the main entrance, and then the building goes through on both left and right to access along there versus multiple entrances. This would be kind of a thought or an idea from a townhouse perspective, still having some urban feels and themes where you bring the buildings forward. On the retail side, we've gone through a lot of different configurations, and we're continuing to chase a couple projects right now for office users. And so we've laid out up to as much as 1 million square feet on our site. The soils are good to even consider structured parking. I'm not saying we would do structured parking. However, there are a couple deals that we have thrown it in there to see if it all sticks. We're always fishing, we're always chasing. But if those don't pan out, what we look at from a max, or at least one of the scenarios, would be 476,000 square feet of commercial space. And that would be mixed between retail, office, and potential hotel. We think that would break out to about a little over 1,400 jobs from a real estate impact. You see the tax rate, and again, this is at full build out, a little over 1.3 annually. That'd be broken down in the general fund of a little over $1 million, and then because we're in the Route 17 area, that'd be $245,000 per year. Keep in mind that our site is not on the tax roll since the EDA owns it, so we'd inject that thing into the revenue stream immediately once it becomes private. B-poll taxes were conservative at about $100,000, and then retail sales at a little over 1.5. So all in, full build out. I think it's conservative. We talk about $3 million impact for the site itself on the commercial spectrum. So that's really what we're thinking as it relates to the site from a holistic manner, but then down to the site itself. So we really want to do something different out there. And so I mentioned about how we've evolved on this site. So when we took ownership from the State Community College Board in 2005, again, we were in Joint Forces Command, modeling in SimWorld. We were SimCity. And so we signed a document that says we're going to put modeling and simulation and those that are supporting Joint Forces Command on our site as well as a portion of TCC's site. Obviously, the disestablishment changed, so we changed along with it. So jointly, we signed off on a new agreement, and it's going to the document will refer to a number of parcels, and there's been some change. Parcel C now is owned by the Sanitation District. Again, our site listed as Parcel A. This is an old exhibit. And then B and D are currently owned by the Real Estate Foundation. So we amended it to say that we would be in support of commercial uses, and that really referenced and had impacts to Parcel A and Parcel B. So again, the thinking was, let's do the easy thing. We're in economic development. We're going to build commercial development because that's what we do. And so we amended it to say such, and it had an impact to Parcel B on the Real Estate Foundation as well as the EDA site. So as we've gone out there and chased office, and we've seen that really shifting across Hampton Roads, across the nation, across Suffolk, we've realized that we need more flexibility. And so this thought of an innovation district, the thought of mixed use, really is something that probably makes this thing work. In interacting with the Real Estate Foundation, they're thinking similarly that residential or portions thereof is going to play a role on that parcel, again, Parcel B, so there's an impact to them as well. So they're thinking on the same line that we are. And so in your package for consideration and for resolution would be an amendment, and highlighted in red is really the meat of it, is that these sites would be available for commercial and residential uses that are planned in a comprehensive and cohesive mixed-use setting. Further developments must provide and support economic development opportunities for the region and the Commonwealth. And that top box, those green checks represent everyone who signed thus far. That's the community college themselves, their Real Estate Foundation, and the EDA took action last month. So we would ask that the council would act as well. It is the intention of the Real Estate Foundation to then go to Richmond and get the State Board of Community Colleges to sign the amendment, as well as the governor, because the governor has been a party of this agreement in the past. So again, item number 20 on your package for consideration is a resolution in support of this action.